And the last thing I wanted to mention about UVs is offsetting them. I kept mentioning it before, but I saved it for last because it's one of those final things I do before the baking phase. If you do it early on and you end up changing your mesh or having to edit your UVs or something like that, then you have to mirror those changes over again and offset the UVs again, which can get pretty annoying after a while. The idea behind offsetting your UVs is really quite simple. If you are using mirrored UVs, then you should offset half of the mirrored portions to any whole unit value outside of the 0 to 1 space. So basically, if you were to take a look at the torso here, this is the her left side of the torso, and on the UVs here, this is her right side. And what I did here was because these UVs were overlapping, and let me show you. This is kind of how it was originally, and this is the way it should be to begin with, because you want this side of the body to use the same texture as this side, except have it be mirrored, and this is the way it would look. But the reason why we offset things, and let's just go ahead and move it back. I'm moving it one whole unit to the right, and because when you do that, then technically the texture is going to be tiling outside of the 0 to 1 space. So it doesn't matter if this shell was either here or one whole unit down here or one whole unit down here. It's still going to get the same texture, but getting these UVs outside of this main part will prevent the normal map from kind of doubling up, because when the normal map renders, it tends to look at both shells, and it'll try to render the two together, and it will just get some bad results. To actually offset the UVs is a pretty simple thing to do in Maya, although it's not immediately intuitive. Let's start back again. Whoops. Like, let's say you've got your torso piece like this. Then I would just select the UV shell, convert the selection to turn on soft selection, convert the selection to UVs. So you've got this going on, and then in the top right hand corner there's this button here which toggles the mode for these text fields. It toggles it from being absolute to relative, and in our case we want it to be relative, because if you had it off in absolute and you just type 1, that's what would happen. But with it on, if you type 1, then it'll move that UV shell exactly over in one whole unit. Now the tricky thing here is that before you press enter in this field, you want to be in the move mode. So for example, if you were in scale or rotate and you typed 1, then it wouldn't do it wouldn't move it. It would be rotating it, or whatever mode you're in. So it's context sensitive in that respect. So again, make sure you're in move mode, and then type 1 again and press enter, and then it'll move it over. And normally I do move things over to the right, just to be consistent whenever I'm doing a model. And if I have in other special cases, if I have like multiple objects on top of each other for some reason, then maybe I'll consider moving it to the above or below or anywhere else. But generally speaking, I just move things to the right one. And you may have noticed that I have some colors to my UV shells here. By default, it's off and it shows like this. But if you click on this button here, it just toggles shaded UV display, and it's very useful. Just be able to at a glance see the shape of your UV shells, and also see what is flipped or not. Blue meaning it's oriented the same way as the mesh normal is, and the red means it's flipped. And in this case, that's what I want, because I had mirrored over that half of the body. If you're baking your maps within Maya, which I do for normal maps and some other miscellaneous things, then instead of offsetting the UVs, you can also, if you go down to the Maya common output here, you could just say ignore mirrored faces, and the normal map would render just fine. But I don't use this because I want the UVs to be offset anyway, even after baking. Now in theory, the UVs only need to be offset while baking, because for display, the normal maps will display just fine, even if the UVs are overlapping, as long as they just weren't overlapping when they were baked. But in some game engines, there may be some problems where you'll get sort of a seam at the edges where you had overlapping UV islands. Even though you may have baked it correctly, just the fact that the UVs are still overlapping, it could, in some engines, it might display oddly. So just to be safe, I keep my UVs offset because there are no problems to do this. Keeping your UVs out, the other half of your UVs out like that, poses really no problems at all. At least in the uses that I've had to put my models through. And honestly, there are some benefits to keeping your UVs offset as well. I mean, it just makes it a lot easier to just select half your model, for example, or just to keep things separated a little bit to make things easier for yourself when you need to select some different elements of your model.